My name is Eleanor. I am 70 years old, and yesterday, my own daughter sent me a text message she never intended for me to see. The words I read on that glowing screen, meant for her husband, shattered the very foundation of my world and sent me fleeing my own home the next morning with a secret plan she could never have anticipated. Mark, I can't do this anymore. Having mother in this house is suffocating me. My daughter Clara's words, cold and sharp as broken glass, stared back at me from my phone. She's a burden, a constant, hovering burden, and the financial drain is ridiculous. I found a place called Silver Pines Assisted Living. It's $850 a month. We'd be saving so much. The floor beneath my feet seemed to liquefy. This was my Clara, the child I had raised alone, working double shifts as a nurse for 40 years. The girl whose college tuition I paid by cashing in my own retirement bonds early. The young woman who sobbed in my arms when her first serious boyfriend left her, and for whom I secretly worked extra night shifts to pay for a summer abroad to help her heal. The text continued, and each new sentence was a fresh wound. Also, I went through the deed. The house is in her name, but I figured out a way to get it transferred to us. My friend Lydia at the probate court says it's straightforward with the right paperwork. She's drawn up a power of attorney document for me to get mother to sign. My hands trembled so violently, the phone clattered onto the kitchen table. My house, the only thing I truly owned. The small two-bedroom home I'd painstakingly paid for with 40 years of aching feet and sleepless nights. The house where I'd planted a rose bush for every major milestone in Clara's life. But the deepest cut came with the final line. In a month, this will all be over. She'll be at Silver Pines, we'll have the house, and we can finally live our lives without that sentimental old woman and her constant, suffocating need for connection. If you have ever felt the soul-crushing weight of betrayal from the person you love most, you will understand the hollow, silent scream that filled my chest in that moment. But what my daughter Clara failed to realize is that her mother, after 70 years on this earth, has learned that the quietest mouse, when cornered, can become the most cunning of foxes. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the dark, in my favorite armchair, and watched the moon trace its path across the floorboards I had polished myself. When the first hint of dawn painted the sky, I rose with a clarity I hadn't felt in a decade. I put on my best navy blue dress, the one I had worn to her graduation, gathered every important document I could find into my worn leather satchel, and left my home with a serene smile and a resolution that would change everything. If my story resonates with you, if you know what it's like to have your love thrown back in your face, then subscribe to this channel. Stay with me. There are more stories like mine to tell, and you are not alone in needing to hear them. To understand the depth of the fracture, you need to know the foundation that was broken. I grew up in a small town where love was a verb, an action word demonstrated through sacrifice. My own mother, a widow, who worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads, taught me that family was the ultimate currency. Eleanor, she'd say, her hands rough from cleaning other people's offices, for family, you dig deep. You give until it hurts, and then you give some more. That's how you build a legacy. When I found myself pregnant at 19, the father vanished like smoke. One day he was talking about wedding bands, the next he had moved across the country without a forwarding address. His family told me I was a problem they wouldn't inherit. It was my mother who wrapped her arms around me and said, "This baby is our future. We will make sure she has every opportunity we didn't." She sold her only piece of fine jewelry, a string of pearls from her own mother, to buy a crib, a pram, and stacks of diapers. Clara was born on a stormy April morning, and she was my sunrise. She had my mother's wise eyes and a laugh that could light up the darkest of my night shifts. We lived in a tiny apartment, my mother watching Clara while I worked the 3 to 11 p.m. shift at St. Jude's Hospital. I remember the bone-deep exhaustion, the way my feet would scream after 12 hours on linoleum floors. But I also remember coming home to a sleeping baby, her cheek soft against my shoulder, and knowing every ache was worth it. I remember saving for months to buy Clara a brand new bicycle for her 10th birthday. It cost $129, a fortune to me then. I skipped lunches, took on extra weekend shifts, and patched the knees of my own jeans. The look on her face when she saw that red bike with its shiny silver bell, that was my reward. "You're the best mommy in the whole world," she'd whispered, her arms wrapped tightly around my neck. I would have worked 100 more shifts for that feeling. High school was a whirlwind of expenses: cheerleading uniforms, yearbooks, science fair projects. I picked up private duty nursing on my days off, sitting with elderly patients through the night to pay for it all. When college acceptance letters came, I wept with pride. The tuition for State University was $12,000 a year. I took out a second mortgage on our small house, the one my mother had left me, to make it happen. "Mom, I don't know how you do it," Clara said the day we moved her into the dormitory. "I'm going to make you so proud. When I graduate, I'm going to take care of you. You'll never have to work another night shift again." I believed her. Every sacrifice felt validated in that moment. She met Mark during her senior year. He was a confident, ambitious man in a sharp suit, working in commercial real estate. He seemed charming, successful. When he asked for my blessing to marry her, I gave it gladly, dreaming of the stable, happy life she would have. The wedding was a beautiful, expensive affair at the Willow Creek Country Club. The venue alone was $7,500. I paid for it by draining the small nest egg I'd painstakingly rebuilt after her college years. I didn't hesitate. My daughter deserved a beautiful beginning. The first few years of their marriage were good. They visited every Sunday. Clara would bring me groceries, insisting on paying my utility bills. "It's my turn, Mom," she'd say. I felt a profound sense of peace. A job well done. The hard years were over. The shift was subtle, beginning about 2 years ago when Mark's real estate investments hit a rough patch. They started asking for loans. First, it was $2,000 for a property tax payment, then $3,500 to cover a business expense, then $5,000 to consolidate some credit card debt. I gave it to them, from my savings, from the small inheritance my aunt had left me. I was a mother. It was what I did. Then the Sunday visits became fortnightly, then monthly. The phone calls grew shorter. "We're just so busy, Mom," Clara would say, her voice distant. "You know how it is with Mark's work." I did know, or I told myself I did. Then came the comments, always framed as concern. "Mark mentioned you seemed a bit confused about the dates last week. Are you getting enough sleep?" Or, "This house is a lot for you at your age. All these stairs." They began to treat me like a fragile, fading photograph. They suggested a temporary stay 6 weeks ago. "There's a leak in our apartment building, Mom. They need to replace pipes in all the units. Can we stay with you for a few weeks? It'll be like a slumber party." I was thrilled. I missed my daughter. I prepared the guest room, stocked the fridge with their favorite foods. From the moment they moved in, the atmosphere changed. My house was no longer mine. Mark would complain about the drafty windows, the outdated kitchen. "Eleanor, a woman your age should be in a more modern, manageable space." He'd say, not unkindly, but the implication was a constant low hum. Clara began organizing my things. My collection of vintage teacups, each with a memory, was packed away into a box labeled donations. My books were rearranged, my furniture moved. I became a ghost in my own home. They would have hushed conversations in the kitchen that would cease the moment I entered. "Just talking about the market, Mom," Clara would say with a tight smile. I noticed documents on the table, quickly covered when I approached. The final, chilling piece was the parade of professionals. A woman named Dr. Evans came to assess the home environment for senior safety. A man from Aging Well Services came to discuss options. They always came when Clara was home, and they always spoke to me with a gentle, patronizing tone, as if I were a child. I heard Clara tell my neighbor, "Mother's memory isn't what it used to be. We're just looking out for her." The text message that broke me arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. I was making tea, trying to find a moment of peace in my disrupted kitchen. My phone buzzed, a text from Clara. I opened it, expecting a grocery list. What I read was my execution order, written in the digital hand of my only child. Mark, I can't do this anymore. Having Mother in this house is suffocating me. She's a burden, a constant, hovering burden, and the financial drain is ridiculous. I found a place called Silver Pines Assisted Living. It's $850 a month. We'd be saving so much. Also, I went through the deed. The house is in her name, but I've figured out a way to get it transferred to us. My friend Lydia at the probate court says it's straightforward with the right paperwork. She's drawn up a power of attorney document for me to get Mother to sign. It's just a matter of getting her to do it without reading it too closely. I'll tell her it's for medical decisions. Lydia says with the POA and a couple of supportive medical opinions, like the one from Dr. Evans, we can petition for guardianship. She estimates the whole process, including the property transfer, will cost about $600 in filing fees and, let's call it, gratuities. It's an investment. I spoke to the director at Silver Pines, a Mr. Jenkins. I told him Mother has early cognitive decline and that living alone is a danger. He was very understanding. I've completed the preliminary admission forms. The plan is set. Next Thursday, we'll tell her she has a routine doctor's appointment. We'll take her to Silver Pines, and she'll be settled before she even realizes what's happening. With the guardianship, she won't have a legal leg to stand on. In a month, this will all be over. She'll be at Silver Pines, we'll have the house, and we can finally live our lives without that sentimental old woman and her constant suffocating need for connection. We can sell this place, pay off our debts, and maybe finally take that trip to Italy. This house must be worth at least $475,000. It's our ticket out. I read it once, then again, and a third time, each word searing itself into my mind. The cold calculation, the manipulation, the casual cruelty. The mention of Dr. Evans confirmed my deepest fear. This was a coordinated, malicious plan. They weren't just inconvenienced. They were actively orchestrating my removal and theft. My own daughter was planning to have me declared incompetent, to steal the home I had built for us, and to lock me away, all while pretending to care for me. The phrase, suffocating need for connection, felt like a physical blow. All I had ever wanted was her love. I sat at that table for an hour, maybe 2. The tea grew cold, the sun set. The house was silent, but my mind was roaring. The pain was a living thing, gnawing at my insides. But then, as the moon rose, something else stirred. A fierce, quiet anger. A deep, primal need for survival. I was not a burden. I was not incompetent. I was Eleanor Margaret Vance, RN, who had held the hands of the dying and brought new life into the world. I had survived poverty, loneliness, and exhaustion. I would not be erased by my own child. I went to bed, but did not sleep. I lay in the dark, and I planned. I thought of every document, every comment, every professional visit. I noted dates, times, and direct quotes. I described the text message verbatim. I printed 3 copies. Then, I went to an office supply store and bought a small, discreet, voice-activated recorder. I tested it. It worked. My second stop was my bank. I asked for Miriam, the branch manager who had helped me for 20 years. "Eleanor, it's good to see you," Miriam said, her smile warm. "What can I do for you today?" "Miriam, I need your help," I said, my voice low but steady. "I need you to pull up all records of any inquiries or access attempts on my accounts over the last 6 months, specifically from my daughter Clara." Miriam's smile faded. She typed on her keyboard, her brow furrowing. "Eleanor, there are several notes here. Clara came in 2 weeks ago. She presented a letter, signed you, authorizing her to access your account information to help you manage your finances due to, she hesitated, age-related difficulties. My blood ran cold. May I see that letter? She pulled it up on screen. The signature was a good forgery, but it wasn't mine. The slant was wrong. That is not my signature, Miriam. I never signed that. My daughter is attempting to defraud me. Miriam's face hardened with professional resolve. This is very serious. I'm locking down your accounts immediately. We will require your presence and photo ID for any future transactions. I also recommend you file a police report. That's my next stop. But first, I want to change all my passwords, set up new security questions, and remove any and all authorized users. I also want to change the beneficiary on my life insurance policy. I had named her Clara years ago. Now I direct it to be paid to the National Council on Aging. For the next hour, we secured my financial life. The $9,200 in my savings account was transferred to a new private account. My finances were now a fortress, and Clara was on the outside. My third stop was the county probate court. I walked through the heavy doors, my satchel feeling like a shield. I approached the information desk. I'm looking for a woman named Lydia who works here. She's a friend of my daughter. Oh, that would be Lydia Sharp, room 204. I found room 204. It was a small office with a nameplate on the door. I took a deep breath, turned on the recorder in my purse, and walked in. A woman in her 40s with severe blonde hair looked up from her computer. Can I help you? You must be Lydia, I said, offering a warm, slightly confused smile. I'm Clara's mother, Eleanor. She's told me so much about you. She said you've been such a help with all this tedious insurance paperwork. Lydia's face went through a rapid series of adjustments. Surprise, panic, then a forced professional calm. Mrs. Vance, what a surprise. Clara didn't mention you were coming? Oh, you know how she is. I waved a hand dismissively. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd pop in. I wanted to thank you personally and maybe understand a bit more about these documents she's been having me sign. It's all so confusing at my age. Lydia shifted uncomfortably. It's just standard procedure, updating beneficiaries, that sort of thing. Beneficiaries? I feigned innocent curiosity, but my insurance is already in order, and Clara mentioned something about a power of attorney. For medical decisions? I feel perfectly capable of making my own decisions, you know? I let my voice tremble just slightly. Lydia's eyes darted toward her closed door. Mrs. Vance, sometimes families like to be prepared. It's just a precaution. Lydia, I said, dropping the confused old lady act and letting my voice drop to a steely whisper. I know about the plan. I know about the power of attorney document you drafted for Clara to trick me into signing. I know you advised her on how to use it, along with fake medical reports to have me declared incompetent and steal my house. Her face lost all its color. I don't know what you're... I took out my phone and opened the text message. I didn't show her the whole thing, just enough for her to see her name. My friend Lydia at the probate court says it's straightforward with the right paperwork. Would you like me to go find your supervisor and show him the rest? It mentions a $600 price tag, including gratuities. I believe that's called a bribe. Lydia looked like a trapped animal. She told me you were declining rapidly, that it was for your own good. She said you'd be a danger to yourself. It was for $475,000, Lydia, my house, and you were her inside man. I leaned forward. You have two choices. You can help me undo every single piece of paper you fabricated, provide me with copies of everything, and write a full signed confession of what you and my daughter plotted, or I walk out of this office and straight to the district attorney's office with this recording. I tap my purse. She broke. Tears welled in her eyes. I'll lose my job. I should have thought of that before you decided to help someone commit elder fraud. The confession. Now. Over the next hour, under the unblinking eye of my recorder, Lydia typed a full confession. She detailed how Clara had approached her, how they had schemed to use Dr. Evans' fraudulent report, how the power of attorney was designed to be signed under false pretenses. She printed out copies of every document they had generated. She signed and dated the confession. I had her. My final stop of the day was the law firm of Barrett and Sullivan, specializing in elder law. I was ushered into the office of Miss Anya Sharma, a sharp-eyed woman with a compassionate but no-nonsense demeanor. I laid it all out on her desk, the printed log, the bank documents proving forgery, Livia's confession, the damning text message. Miss Sharma reviewed the evidence with a growing look of grim determination. Mrs. Vance, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of predatory family fraud I've ever seen. The evidence is irrefutable. What is it you want to achieve? Justice, Miss Sharma, I said, my voice quiet but firm. But more than that, I want my life back. I want them out of my house, I want my name cleared, and I want them to understand that they cannot do this to me or to anyone without facing consequences. Then we will make sure they understand, she said. We will file for a temporary restraining order to keep them away from you and your property. We will file for a civil suit for fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conspiracy. And we will be taking this, she tapped Lydia's confession, along with a copy of that text message, to the police to press criminal charges. We worked for 2 hours, drafting documents, making plans. I signed a retainer. I was no longer fighting this battle alone. I returned home as evening fell. Clara and Mark were in the living room watching television. "Mom, there you are," Clara said, that familiar, fake concern plastered on her face. "We were getting worried. You were gone all day." "I had a lot to take care of," I said calmly, hanging my coat. "Important things." "Anything we can help you with?" Mark asked, not looking away from the TV. "No," I said, a small smile touching my lips. "I have it completely under control. By the way, we'll be having some visitors tomorrow morning. I expect you both to be here." "Visitors?" Clara's voice was sharp. "Who?" "You'll see. They're here to help us clarify our family's future." The look they exchanged was a beautiful mixture of confusion and unease. For the first time in months, I slept a deep, untroubled sleep. The doorbell rang at 9 a.m. sharp the next morning. I answered it to find Miss Sharma, 2 uniformed police officers, a man and a woman, and a process server. Clara and Mark stood up from the sofa as we entered the living room. "Mom, what is this?" Clara demanded, her eyes wide.
"Please, sit down," I said, my voice calm but authoritative. "This won't take long." Ms. Sharma stepped forward. "Ms. Clara Vance and Mr. Mark Timmons. I am attorney Anya Sharma, representing Mrs. Eleanor Vance. We are here to serve you with a temporary restraining order, barring you from any contact with Mrs. Vance or from entering her property effective immediately. You have 30 minutes to gather your personal belongings and vacate the premises." "You can't be serious," Mark blustered. "This is our home." "It is your mother's home," Ms. Sharma corrected him coolly. "And we have compelling evidence that you have been engaged in a concerted effort to defraud her of it." "What evidence?" Clara cried, her voice shrill. "This is insane. Mother, what have they told you?" I took out my phone. "They told me nothing I didn't already know, Clara. Would you like to hear it from you?" I pressed play on the text message. I read it aloud, my voice never wavering. "Mark, I can't do this anymore. Having Mother in this house is suffocating me. She's a burden. I found a place called Silver Pines Assisted Living. My friend Lydia at the probate court." Should I continue? Clara's face was a mask of pure, undiluted horror. "That was private. You had no right." "You sent it to me," I said simply. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean it. We were stressed," she pleaded, tears starting to fall. They were tears of panic, not remorse. Ms. Sharma placed Lydia's signed confession on the coffee table. This, from your accomplice at the probate court, details your conspiracy. We also have evidence of signature forgery at the bank. The police are here to take your statements regarding the criminal charges of fraud and conspiracy. The female police officer stepped forward. We will be escorting you from the property now. You may collect your things. The next 30 minutes were a chaotic blur of them frantically throwing clothes into suitcases, under the watchful eyes of the officers. Clara kept trying to catch my eye, to plead with me, but I looked through her, my heart a block of ice in my chest. As they were led to the door, Mark turned to me, his face contorted with rage. You're a miserable, lonely old woman. You've just destroyed the only family you had. No, Mark, I replied, my voice quiet but clear in the sudden stillness of the house. You did that the moment you decided my love was a currency you could steal. The door closed behind them. The silence that descended was profound, broken only by the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. It was my silence, my house, my life. But the battle was not over. The legal proceedings took months. The civil case was settled quickly once their lawyer saw the evidence. Clara and Mark signed a binding agreement. They admitted to their actions in a public legal filing, repaid every cent they had taken from me, a total of $14,500, including legal fees, and agreed to never contact me again. The criminal case proceeded more slowly. Lydia, in exchange for her cooperation, received probation and lost her job. Clara and Mark were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery. They eventually took a plea deal, avoiding jail time, but receiving a felony record, community service, and 5 years of probation. The fallout was total. Mark was fired from his real estate firm. The scandal was too great. Clara lost her job as a marketing manager. Their friends, their social circle, evaporated. They became pariahs, a cautionary tale. I heard through the grapevine that their marriage, built on a foundation of greed, did not survive the pressure. I, however, began to live. I sold the house. It was filled with too many ghosts. It went for $478,000. I bought a lovely, modern apartment in a vibrant, secure community for active seniors. I travel now. I joined a book club. I volunteer at a local shelter reading to children. I have friends who value me from my wit and my stories, not for my assets. I changed my will, leaving everything to charities that support abused and neglected elders. I have found a peace I never knew was possible, a peace born not from the absence of conflict, but from the profound knowledge that I stood up for myself. I saw Clara once, a year later, in a coffee shop. She looked tired, aged. She saw me and quickly looked away, shame radiating from her. There was no wave, no greeting, just the silent vast chasm of her choices between us. And that was okay. I have learned that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, to lay down the burden of anger. But forgiveness does not require reconciliation. It does not require allowing a poisonous person back into your garden. My life now is my own. It is a life of early morning walks, of new recipes tried and failed, of laughter with friends, of the quiet joy of a book on a rainy afternoon. It is a life of dignity. At 72, I am finally completely and unapologetically free. If you've ever had to find your own strength in the face of a loved one's betrayal, I would love to hear your story in the comments below. Tell me what city you're listening from. And if this story gave you courage, remember to subscribe to the channel. There are more stories of resilience and redemption to come, and I'd be honored to have you with me for the next one.